Hey everyone, Rowan here with New England Fly Company, looking to share another fly pattern with you. Regrettably, it is still winter here in Maine, and the fish have been even less active than usual with the snowmelt chilling what might have made for some fairly decent fishable waters here in the winter, late winter. However, the direct sun that we've gotten the last week and a half has worked its way through a significant amount of the pond ice at a few of our go-to early season trout holes. And for me, that means it's probably time to start tying up some leeches. So the bunny leech is a very tried and true pattern for stillwater especially, but also for deep tailwaters across North America. It's super easy to tie. It sinks like a stone. You can get it in really fast, deep waters, fish it really successfully, and it can really open up your fly box to a lot of presentations that might not have been possible without such a natural looking and heavy fly. One of my favorite ways to present this is at the end of a long piece of 4X with about a 2-foot trailing piece of 6X to something like a electric caddis or a small wet fly, usually a partridge in orange for the early spring season. So that way I can make sure I'm getting down in the really, really fast water into the deep holes. The 4X isn't going to offer too much resistance, especially given the weight of the fly itself. And if the fish doesn't want to take something that is kind of that big and obnoxious, maybe it'll take the tailer, right? Maybe it'll take what's kind of trailing behind in that partridge in orange, usually a size 16 or smaller. There are a couple go-to color variations of this pattern that we tend to rely on. The first is a kind of sunburst green. It looks a little bit like this, and you can see it has a little hot spot tied on it. It does have kind of a mottled striped tail. I like some of that variation and that contrast in my patterns. And the other version is what we're going to be tying in this video, which is a kind of purple, red, and black blood leech version. So while the green does tend to be pretty successful for most of the year, especially in the warmer months and the late summer, the black and the red really cannot be beat in the early season and the cold. And if you're heading out to any body of water in New England that's really bigger than what I would consider to be a medium-sized river, so one with kind of 4 to 5 foot deep holes, this pattern should be in your fly box. If you're doing any canoeing, maybe on the still waters after ice out, maybe this is the only thing you're fishing. A very wide variety of species target leeches as forage, from bass to pike to really aggressive landlocked salmon to brook trout, brown trout, rainbow trout. I've even caught crappie, perch, and catfish on them while fishing in some of the trout ponds in New England. So this pattern is pretty sparse and pretty much entirely relies on a 4.6 or 5.5 millimeter tungsten slotted bead for the weight. A lot of different fly recipes call for some sort of wire wrapping or lead wrap inside. I tend to think that the tungsten bead does everything you need it to do. You don't need any extra weight, even though the rabbit strip does have a lot of water resistance to it. So for our materials, as you can see, we're going to have a Foaling Mill FM 5045. This is going to be the Jig Force Black Nickel. It's a 2X heavy in size 8. It is barbless. We're also going to have our 4.6 millimeter red slotted tungsten bead. As I said earlier, feel free to go up to a 5.5. The first version of this that I tied was always a 5.5 bead. I fished it on anything from 2X down to even 6X, and it just worked like a charm every time. For our thread, because we are going to put a little hot spot on this just to give it a little extra pizzazz, we're going to go for the UTC 140 denier in fluorescent fire orange. Because it is a bunny leech, we are going to use the rabbit strips in black. These are just the, I think, 1/8 width from hairline. And then the last material we're going to use really ties it all together and I think gives this particular pattern its natural look and its allure. And that's going to be the Arizona Simi seal. So this is a really long, a really long kind of synthetic dubbing. It has, I want to say 5 or 6 different colors, a little bit of UV in it. It shines really well. It looks very translucent in the water, and it tends to clump very thinly. So some dubbings can kind of, I think, get a little heavy in certain spots. I find this tends to be a little bit more streamlined the more you fish it. It doesn't kind of bunch up. It lets the water run through it, but it also keeps it together, makes it look like a leech, I guess you could say. So let's go right ahead and start whipping this thing up. First thing we're gonna do is put down our thread. We're just gonna go a few up, a few back down, trim away the excess. And then whenever I'm putting on something like a rabbit strip, I always like to make sure I have a nice thread base down first. That's gonna give it a good contact point, and it's gonna minimize, it won't prevent it from fully slipping, but it will minimize the amount that it slips around that hook shank. We're also going to, after we lay that down, move up to the top, create a little pinch, and then wrap our thread up into that slot. It's going to create a little bit of a thread dam that'll keep our bead in place as we're tying the rest of this pattern. So I'll go ahead and I'll end right about there, and I'll show you how I measure my rabbit strip to cut it out. So these can be super long, they can be fairly short and stubby. I have found that the proper distance or the proper amount of rabbit strip is can be measured on my scissors. So as you can see, I got these little Dr. Slick scissors. You can see that little screw that holds the tips together. If I measure that out, and I'll try to hold up the rabbit strip so you can see this. If I try to measure out that rabbit strip from the tip, I like to put it about where my thumb is, right at the top of that screw. And to me, that's an ideal length. It creates enough coverage on the hook so that it holds firmly, but also gives it a really nice kind of thick tail. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't get completely right, and again, it probably doesn't matter for the fish, but I like to be as kind of exacting as possible. One of the things that I think people don't get entirely right when they're tying leeches is they create too much bunching at the head. If you've ever seen a leech swim, it almost is kind of like thinning its little nose and probing the water ahead of it. So it actually has a very, very slim, small head, and then a really, really fat butt as it swims, and it looks really strange and eerie. So using the rabbit fur, I like to make the butt end, the tail end of this pattern kind of as thick as possible. And then when we wrap the Simi seal, we'll wrap it heavier toward the tail and thinner toward the head. So you can also, from this point, before you put it on and start wrapping it up, strip away some of these hairs on the front end. A lot of people find that that helps it stick. I'm a little ambivalent, but I'm willing to agree that it probably does help a little bit. I don't think it matters as much, but it's up to you. I'm just gonna tie it on straight as is. I'm gonna go ahead and pinch and just fold it around kind of like a hot dog bun on that hook, just to make sure that it doesn't slip anywhere as I am adhering it down. We're gonna go a few times up and down, and then we're gonna come back to the end. We're gonna pinch up, we're gonna do at least 2 loops under the tail just to create a little bit of distance from the hook point and that rabbit tail. And so this is going to prevent it from, hopefully prevent it from getting wrapped up in your actual hook gape here when you are slinging it in the water. So we've wrapped it down, wrapped it back up. We're gonna try to create a little distance here, and actually my bead has come a little undone, so we're just gonna shore up that thread dam real fast. Gonna create a little bit of room there. And so this is where it can start to get a little tricky with your dubbing. So we're gonna go ahead and move the thread down to the tail end. And you could, with the Simi seal, apply it in 2 ways. You could either just twist it around your thread, which is the normal kind of way, or you can do what I'm gonna do, which is create a dubbing loop. So all that's required to do that is pull your thread down, create a little loop in your finger, pull it out to this side so you can see, and then make sure that you are tying that off securely so it doesn't slip. Pull our thread to the head of the fly, and then I'm gonna actually show you a little trick. So a lot of people have a very specific tool to spin their loops. I'm just gonna do it with my whip finish. So I'm not sure if it'll work with a different shape, but for the one I have, you can see that it has this little bend in it. So I'm going to insert my whip finish tool into that thread loop, have it find that bend, and then using a little notch in 3 of my fingers, I can actually capture this and then twist this tool around to create that tight loop, and I'll show you here in a bit. But first, we have to get our Simi seal in it. So as I said, we're gonna make it a little bit heavier toward the tail end than we do the front. So when it comes to the Simi seal, usually just take a little clump like this, try to wet my fingers, and I'll pick very, very lightly toward a thicker clump there. It's easy, I think, to put too much of this on, but I do think it is better to go a little heavier than to be too light, because the thread is going to show through, being it's fluorescent, and we really do want it to have this kind of purple blood red hue to it. So this is about the right kind of gradient. You can see I'll actually turn it around for you. So as you can see, it's pretty thick on my finger side, and it goes pretty light on this end. So we're gonna put the thick side at the top, because the top is what's going to spin toward the base of our fly. So we'll go ahead, open up our dubbing loop. We'll just insert that clump as we have designed it. And then, as you can see, I'm just gonna pinch it and then use my finger to spin this loop. And so the amount of tension on this can vary. You'll wanna keep it a little loose to allow the tool to spin in your fingers, but you'll wanna keep it tight enough so that it doesn't kind of all fall apart and slip out of your hand. And as you're tying too, because you're shortening the distance as you're tightening it, you'll need to release some of that pressure to allow that material to spin, just like it is there. So keep spinning until the thickest part of that dubbing has started to tighten up. There we go. You can kind of work it up. You can see, go this way. You can see we have a nice kind of thick bit right here, and then it starts to really thin out toward the front there. So now we'll go ahead and we'll just apply our little dubbing loop up the hook. So I think that was maybe 5, 6 turns. It doesn't take a whole lot. We'll just go ahead and catch it there. Have a couple under, couple over, couple under, couple over. It is important to make sure that that particular bit doesn't come undone. So I like to maybe overdo it a little more than I would otherwise. Go ahead and clean up the excess there. And then always remember that if you're gonna use your tool like this, just take off this little bit, otherwise it'll get in the way of your whip finish. And so now that we have that applied, I'm just gonna put a little more pressure on my loop and hold the fly in my offhand, just to make sure I can do it really tightly. Then I'm gonna go ahead and do 2 4-turn whip finishes. So, that's 1. 1, 2, 3, 4 for 2. Pull that nice and tight. Snip the excess. And then the last thing we have to do is brush out our dubbing. So I'll go ahead and grab my dubbing brush. And then making sure to hold the fly so I'm not wobbling it all over the place. I just take a little bit of Velcro and I just give it a nice little scrub. So usually the Velcro will pull it straight out, and that's kind of what you want. You want it to loosen up first, and then you can start to shape it and draw it back in the way that you would want after that. So we got a lot of that material coming out. We can start to brush it back toward the leather patch, keeping the head of our fly a little lighter, as discussed earlier. And there we go. So go ahead and wet my fingers, start to draw this back a little bit. As you can see, we're starting to get quite a bit more of that material toward the back, and then it leads in to a much smaller and more narrow head, right into that hot spot and right into the bead. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the blood bunny. This is our favorite go-to leech in the winter, and I hope you tie up a few and find yourself some success. I appreciate you hanging out with me for this fly pattern. If you appreciated the content, please like and subscribe and share if the spirit moves you. If you'd like to purchase this fly or any of our other available patterns, you can always find them at newenglandfly.com. Tight lines, and we'll see you next time.